All right, the next section of our course is going to be focusing on job interviews. So, of course, this is an absolutely essential skill. No matter where you're living, what type of career field you're in, job interviews is a skill that we all need, that we all have to use. So, within a job interview, the interviewer, the person who is interviewing, is going to ask you maybe some difficult questions, some questions that might seem very direct, very straightforward, and we need to be prepared to answer these questions. And whenever we're answering, we don't want to have a dull answer. We want to be concise, but also make sure that our answer is effective, that we are showcasing our skills that we have, our experience, our knowledge, our expertise, and why we would ultimately be an excellent fit for whatever position or company we are applying for. With that being said, we're going to go over some of the most common interview questions, some of the more difficult interview questions, and then we're going to practice some ways to answer these questions. So we're going to go over how we should answer these questions first, what information we should include, what tactics we should use, and then we will actually practice answering. I'm going to emphasize the importance of recording yourself. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to explain how we should answer it, and then I'm going to give you an example of an answer. Whenever I'm giving the example of this answer, I'm going to be speaking very slowly so that you can be repeating each sentence after me. So just like we did with the reading, I'm going to repeat each sentence very slowly and you're going to practice it after me. Whenever we're answering these questions together, you should be recording yourself so that later you can go back and listen to the difference or listen to see which words are different whenever you say it and whenever I say it. So again, we're going to go over some common interview questions. We're going to talk about how to ideally answer these questions. I'm going to give you some tips, and then we're going to answer these questions together. And again, we're going to use the same method that we've been using throughout this entire course of drilling. Anytime you hear a difference in a word from when I say it and when you say it, that's the word that you're going to focus on for drilling. You're going to drill that word. You're going to use it in 10 different sentences and practice it for at least 2 weeks. Of course, these interview questions, there are so many out there, but these are some of the more common ones and some of the more general ones that you will probably be asked no matter what field you're going into or what job you're applying for. So our most basic question, usually the first question that somebody will ask you in an interview is, tell me about yourself. Right? So in this question, are they asking you to literally tell them everything about you, your hobbies, your interests, your family? Probably not. In order to effectively, efficiently answer this question, we want to talk a little bit about our employment history. But we're not going to go through every single job that we've worked at. We're going to think of the positions in the past, whether it be an actual job, an internship, maybe even a volunteer experience, anything that is relevant to the position that you are applying for. For example, I'm a teacher, so maybe if I'm applying to be a Spanish teacher, I'm going to highlight my experience tutoring Spanish in the past. I'm going to highlight that I've been immersed in the culture, that I speak the language fluently, that I'm aware of the grammar. So I'm going to highlight anything that is relevant to the position. And we also want to talk about if your education is relevant as well. Let's say you are applying for a marketing position and you studied communications or you studied business. That's something that you're going to want to mention, of course. So again, tell me about yourself. We're going to talk about our relevant history, whether it be volunteer experiences, internship experiences, maybe even a class that you took in university, any employment experiences, anything like that that could be relevant to the position that you're applying for. And then we're going to talk about maybe any accomplishments that we have, and then we're going to tie it all together to explain why we would be perfect for this role. So if I'm applying to be a Spanish teacher, I could say, well, I have my degree in the Spanish language. I studied in these countries where I studied Spanish and I was immersed in the language. I've also been teaching for X amount of years. And because of all of this experience and knowledge, I think I would be an excellent fit for this position. So we're going to tie it all together at the end here. So now that we've talked about some tips on how to answer this question, let's practice a sample answer. Okay, so we're going to practice this together. Remember, I'm going to ask the question as if I were interviewing myself, and then I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer the question very slowly so that you can record and practice with me. So you're going to repeat after each sentence or part of a sentence. Okay, so I'm an employer, for example, and I'm asking the question, tell me about yourself. All right, let's practice this answer. Well, I'm currently a project manager at Smith Agency. Where I manage a team of 20 people. Before that, I worked at an agency where I coordinated with community partners to create events. And while I really enjoyed the work that I did, I'd love the chance to expand my experience across different industries. Particularly in digital marketing. Which is why I'm so interested in joining a company like this one. As we can see in this answer, we highlighted our important experience that's relevant to this position. So we talked about our current position as a project manager, which shows leadership. You managed a team of 20 people. It's always good to put numbers. If you have a team that you are in charge of, it's good to include how many people are on that team or how many clients you've worked with in the past. And then we go on to talk about, another agency that I worked at where I coordinated with community partners. So it shows that, I'm able to talk to different people in the community and coordinate, organize things. I have good organization skills. And then I'm explaining why I'm switching from these fields to kind of a new field. I'm explaining that I really liked that work, but I want to expand my experiences, I want to expand my knowledge, I want to expand into different industries, and that's why I'm interested in this current position. So again, you can also include any relevant education. If you studied something that is relevant to what you're applying for, definitely include that as well. So let's focus on this question of why do you want to work at this company? So whenever we're asked this question, first of all, we need to prepare beforehand. We need to investigate a little bit about the company, maybe investigate when the company started, how it has changed over the years. We want to investigate maybe its mission, its goal, all of these components so that if they ask us this, we are prepared to answer. So we can talk about the company's history. Maybe we see that the company started 50 years ago and that's something that's appealing to us. So you can talk about the company's history. You can talk about the culture of the company. Maybe you notice that it has like an open office workspace and that's something that you really like. Or you see that the employees work on teams rather than individually. Maybe you see that the company is constantly adapting to new trends and our world that is constantly changing. So you're going to find some aspect of the company that really stands out to you, that also aligns with your values, your interests, and that's what you're going to focus on. And then you're also going to talk about what you could contribute to the company. So you're going to talk about what appeals to you about the company, and then we're going to talk about how you could contribute to the company. So again, if you see that it's a company where there are different approaches and different strategies, that it's constantly keeping up with new trends, then you could say that you have fresh ideas that you could contribute to the company. You could make sure that the company is always up to date with fresh new ideas. So we're going to talk about the history, and then we're going to talk about how you could contribute to the company's growth or the company's success. Okay, so let's again practice a sample answer here. So our question is, why do you want to work at this company? Remember, start recording and let's practice this answer together. This company caught my eye because of the unique approach it takes in the marketing field. I appreciate and respect the knowledge and experience this company has and how much room to grow there is. Throughout the years, I've noticed that the company keeps up to date on new marketing strategies and methods. And I think I could help contribute to keeping the company fresh. All right, so in this answer, we see that we talk about the company's unique approach, that the company has a lot of knowledge and experience. That's something that's appealing to us, that there's room to grow. And then we notice that the company is always adapting, and I have really great ideas, so I know I can make sure that the company stays with its goal of continuously adapting and making sure things are new and fresh. Right? So obviously if we're talking about a real company, you can mention, I noticed the company has been in business for 5 years. That's appealing to me because I really enjoy working for growing companies. So if it's a newer company, we can also take that approach. Excellent. Remember, I will always remind you guys of this. Remember to be recording your answers with me so that you can compare your pronunciation. All right, you guys are going to get sick of hearing me say that. So our next question, this is one of the most intimidating interview questions. It is very direct, it is very straightforward. Companies will ask you this. In one of my latest interviews, somebody did ask me this. So we need to be prepared. This question is, why should we hire you? Again, very direct, very straightforward. And sometimes when we're asked this, we're kind of caught off guard. Like, oh goodness, why should they hire me? So we want to make sure that we are prepared, that we know how to answer this, again, concisely, effectively, and also make sure that our answer is appealing. So basically in this question, we want to prove that we are the best candidate. So of course, this company is interviewing other people, and we want to show that we are the best candidate. We need to talk about that, we have the skills to do the work, but that we can also show results, right? So not just, oh yeah, I know how to do this, but I've done this before and these are the results of me doing it. So we want to assure the company that we can deliver results, great results. We want to express that we are able to fit in with the culture of the company, that we would be a great addition to the team, that we have all of the assets, the traits that they're looking for to be on their team, and then emphasize that we would be better than any other candidate. Of course, we can't just say that, oh, I'm the best. We have to show that. So we can talk about our experience, the challenges that we face, the past results that we've had in our other positions. We can talk about different personality traits that are essential to the company. So we really just want to highlight, again, our knowledge, something that makes you unique. Right? Again, they're interviewing lots of people who might have very similar experience, but what makes you unique? Do you know how to be on a team and be able to listen and compromise with people? Do you know how to problem solve? Can you take a problem and express it to the team, but also find a solution, not just exposing a problem? So these are the things that we want to think of that really makes us stand out. Okay, so again, let's practice a sample answer here. So again, go ahead and record and we'll practice together. Why should we hire you? I would be a huge asset to your company. Not only because of my years of relevant experience, but also because of the variety of companies I've worked with in the past. I've observed different marketing strategies within many industries. Ranging from clothing to educational services. I value communication over anything in the workplace. And work great in a team setting. I believe that my positive attitude, passion, and unique experience make me an ideal fit. All right, so in this answer, again, we are saying that we would be a huge asset to the company. We're talking about our experience and our experience across many different industries, not just years of experience, but also the quality of our experience. And then we're talking about our different traits that make us great, where we value communication, we're passionate, all of those things. All right. So let's move on to our next question here. This is also a question that is pretty much always asked in an interview. Actually, the next two questions kind of go together. So our first question is, what are your strengths, right? This is a very common question, and it's almost always paired with, what are your weaknesses, or what is your biggest weakness? So let's first talk about our strengths. How are we going to answer this question? Again, whenever we're answering interview questions, we always want to think about anything that would be relevant to the company or to the position that we're applying for. Our biggest strengths, we might think, oh, I'm very friendly, I'm very respectful, I'm patient, but maybe those traits don't necessarily, they wouldn't be the strongest ones to mention for the position that you're applying to. So we need to think of that. For example, if I'm applying to a teaching position, I might want to add that I'm outgoing, I'm patient, and I'm organized. If I'm applying to a marketing position, we might want to say that we are a problem solver, we are creative, things like that. So we want to think of things that are obviously true that we can talk about, we can give good examples of, but we want to pick the traits that would be most relevant or most appealing to this position. Okay, so that's what we really want to talk about, and we don't want to mention too many things, maybe 2 or 3 traits, and then we want to give examples. Okay, so if you have maybe one trait that you think is the most important and you have a story from a past experience that will exemplify that you have this trait, then that's exactly what you should do, because the interviewer is going to remember that story rather than you explaining, I'm patient, I don't get irritated quickly, blah, 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 blah. If I tell them a story, for example, one time my class was so excited, they were talking and talking and talking. It took me 20 minutes to calm them down, but I was very patient. I waited for them. So I'm telling a story instead of just saying, I'm patient. Okay, so that's what we want to look for. We want to think of traits and we want to think of examples that we can turn into a story, because that's going to be more memorable to your interviewer. Let's practice a sample answer here, okay? Do not forget to record. Let's start. So our question is, what are your strengths? I am excellent at communicating. If I have a doubt, concern, or question, I will not hesitate to communicate that. I'm also a problem solver. When I notice a problem or an area for improvement, I first find a couple of solutions and then present them to the team or to my supervisor. Okay, so this is a rather short answer. Of course, if you were realistically answering this question, like I mentioned before, we want to kind of tell a story. So with the last part here where I talk about, if I notice a problem, instead of just telling my supervisor, oh, we have this problem, I look for a couple of solutions. So this is a really excellent thing to mention in an interview. And we want to make this into a story. So we can think of a past time where there was a problem, and we can think of how we presented this problem to our supervisor. What solutions did we find? So for example, I could say, in my previous position, I noticed that the onboarding process was not efficient and it was very lengthy. So I drafted up a template of a new onboarding process, presented the problems to my supervisor, and then presented them with the solution. Okay, so we want to kind of tell a story. We want to give an example of what we did in the past. Again, that's going to be more memorable than just saying, I'm a problem solver. I know how to find solutions. Okay, well, show the interviewer a time when you actually did this. So the opposite of this question that interviewers usually ask as well is, what is your greatest weakness, or what are some of your weaknesses? This is a very tricky question to answer because the interviewer wants to see if you are able to acknowledge that you do have a fault and then show how you've worked on it. But we also don't want to be too honest. Maybe that's the word. We don't want to say, oh, I'm terrible at meeting deadlines. That's not going to look good at all in an interview. So you want to think of a weakness that we can show we're working on, we're conscious of, or a weakness that can also kind of be a positive thing. What do I mean by that? Usually people answer this question by saying, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I make sure that my work is absolutely perfect, that it has every single detail. Sometimes this means that I over-obsess over tiny little things that might not be important, or it may take me longer to do a project because I'm worrying about all the details. So that can be a weakness, but it's also kind of a good thing because you're showing that you pay attention to details. So that's one of the more cliche ways to answer this question. There are different ways as well. We could talk about maybe in the past I've had issues with time management because I'm very passionate. I take a long time with my projects, but I've been managing that by making to-do lists and using project task manager applications, something like that. So showing that you are aware of this weakness and that you are working on it. You are doing something to make sure that it doesn't affect your work. So let's practice a potential answer here. Okay, so again, make sure you're recording yourself and let's practice together. So our question here is, what is your weakness? Or what are your weaknesses? Sometimes I tend to be too passionate, which leads me to take on more responsibilities than I am realistically able to handle. I get very excited about new projects and tasks and have so many ideas that I want to do as much as I can. In the past, this has led me to be very stressed out from having so many projects and responsibilities. Lately, I've been more realistic with myself about how much I can handle and have expressed my ideas and thoughts to the team members that are in charge of the project. All right, so in this answer, again, we're talking about our weakness, but we don't want to make it too negative. So I'm explaining that I can be too passionate, which leads me to wanting to take on all of the projects and all of the tasks. I have so many great ideas that I want to do it myself. So I talk about that weakness, which is also a good thing. And then I talk about what I've been doing lately to make sure that this doesn't happen. So I talk about how I've been realistic with myself. If I have really great ideas, instead of taking on the project myself, I'm expressing those ideas to the team members or the people that are in charge of the project. So again, it's a weakness, but it's something that we can also turn into something positive. And we're showing that we're conscious of this weakness and that we're working on it. The next question is a really great question that you will probably be asked. There are a couple of different ways to phrase this question. Maybe it'll be, tell me about a challenge or conflict you've experienced at work and how did you deal with it? It might be, tell me about your greatest challenge that you've encountered. Tell me about a challenging situation, something like this, something with a challenge or a conflict. So the interviewer is wanting to see how we handled this difficult situation. So something that we want to be aware of whenever we're answering this question is we want to explain the situation, but we don't want to focus too much on the challenging part or on the problem or on the conflict. We want to focus on the solution. So if I'm talking about something that was really difficult, I don't want to keep going on and explaining, oh, it was so difficult, I didn't think I could do it, it was so hard because of this reason, this reason, this reason. I want to briefly introduce the challenge or conflict, and then I want to move on to how did we as a team deal with it? What was the solution? And then also talk about what you learned from that challenge. How will you avoid being in this situation in the future? How would you approach this challenge in the future? What did you learn from it? So we want to focus on the positive aspects of this challenge or conflict rather than explaining step by step what happened. Let's say, again, I'm a teacher, so I'm giving a lot of examples from the teacher's perspective. Let's say I had a class of students where nobody wanted to participate, right? That's a very big challenge for a teacher. So if I were in an interview, I would explain the situation. Oh, once I had a class of 10 students and only one of them was participating. This was very challenging for me. I researched different ways or different methods, different strategies to make my students feel comfortable. I broke them into smaller groups, and over time, my students began to participate as they felt more confident in class or this or that. What I learned from this is in the future, I should do these activities from beginning to make sure my students feel comfortable. So that's how we're going to kind of set up this answer. We're going to briefly talk about the problem, talk about what we did to solve the problem or to overcome this challenge, and then talk about what we got from this challenge, what we learned from it, and how we can apply that to future problems or challenges. All right, let's practice and answer together. So again, make sure you're recording, and let's begin. So our question is, tell me about a challenge or conflict you faced at work and how you dealt with it. All right, let's begin. In my previous position, I was responsible for a project that another employee had started and then abruptly quit. It was challenging because there were many loose ends that needed to be tied. I remember meeting with the client who was incredibly frustrated about the abrupt change in the project. I listened to the clients and took note of their concerns, questions, and important points while asking plenty of questions. I assured the client that their project was in great hands and that an excellent team would be working on the project and would thoroughly communicate any questions or information directly to them. After the project was finished, the client was more than pleased and was able to regain trust for the company. The client was appreciative of how we handled the situation and the constant communication we held. All right, so with this answer, exactly as we discussed, we briefly explained the problem. We talked about how we handled the problem. So we valued communication, we asked lots of questions, we were listening to the client. We were able to finish the project, solve the problem, and then we showed that the client was, had regained their trust and decided to continue on with the company. So we talked about, instead of focusing too much on the problem, we're really focusing on how we solved this problem, how we avoided more conflict than what was necessary.